Hey everybody, welcome to Storywise with Eric, and today I'm doing a rapid review of Tress of the Emerald Sea by Brandon Sanderson. Guys, this is it right here. Immediately loved this book from basically page one. Was one of those books that you hear about where you can't put it down. Immediately probably in my top 5 books of all time that I've ever read. Was not expecting that. The things I didn't like about this book, man, there's not many. I don't think I could find anything. The thing that I didn't like about it is a good thing, and that it made me angry. It made me feel things towards characters, the villains, that really got me frustrated. Like, oh, you motherfucker. Oh my God. And I think that's supposed to happen. So that is not a knock. But where do I begin? Tress is a young lady who goes to save her love. She goes to rescue the Duke's son, the prince, and it's really well written. Brandon really did a good job writing a strong female character, and I hear that a lot these days. Even my own daughters don't feel like they identify with or love the female characters that they read in books, that they see in video games, that they see in movies. They always seem to be identifying and enjoying and rooting for the men in the movie. And we talk about this because story is a big part of our family, and it's not because men are cool or better or anything like that. It's just the way they're written now is in some ways better. A lot of times and this is from what they've said, and I agree with them, and as we've analyzed it, a lot of times female characters can be written without flaw. They're just strong and overcome and things of that nature, where they're not overcoming a flaw necessarily. They almost already have, like Mulan, the cartoon, was the original one in Disney, was brilliant. She came from this influenced change in China and had to learn along the way and became strong. And then the movie comes out, live action, and she from birth is already an amazing gifted fighter and has to just overcome the discrimination of being a girl. It takes the internal conflict and makes it external, and that kind of makes the story less interesting, whether it's a boy or a girl. Tress has internal conflict. She has a growth. She is going from living on her small island, desiring more, and then going out and to rescue her love, and finding out that she's a different person by the time she gets there, which culminates in a really cool scene that is kind of messes with you. And I really enjoyed that it did that, because I was like, I think I know what's happening, and I don't want it to go and change, but then it changes and you're like, oh, this is awesome. And I also had a plot point that was major that I figured out early, and I was like, oh no, I already figured it out, but I didn't care. Like, it's so well written that even though I knew one of the plot points, how it would turn out early on in the book, I didn't care. I enjoyed the hell out of it. And I even forgot that I knew. And I don't know how he did it. People always talk about Brandon Sanderson being a brilliant writer, and I agree. This was my entry point. And I think if you're looking for an entry point to Brandon Sanderson, this is 300 and some pages. Really digestible. Read it in less than a week. And I'm not the world's fastest reader, but couldn't put it down. The adventure, the world building, the magic system they always talk about. Before I read Brandon Sanderson and got into it, as I was getting into fantasy, every video said the same thing. You're not going to get far before, have you read any Brandon Sanderson? And in true form, it was immediate for me to run into that. And I said I was intimidated. And so someone recommended this book. And so I put it on my list and said, that's going to be the first one I read. And so thank you. You know who you are. Brilliant read. Nice, easy, digestible. And I'm assuming it gives me exposure to how Brandon writes his other novels that are larger in scope. But I appreciated the way he described his magic system and set up the universe, because it made me go out and look for the scientific principles in the real world, and that I learned something and got to teach that to my kids. And I'm not going to give away what that is, but that was another part that intimidated me about Sanderson, was how deeply he thought about the magic system in his world, instead of like, magic. There's actual science kind of principles that influence these things on a different scope that probably isn't realistic, but it's taking on place on a different planet. So this was my first exposure to the Cosmere universe, I believe it's set in. And I'm glad I started there. I might have been overwhelmed if I started with, the Mistborn series or Way of Kings. I'm almost certain I would have, because I was in Barnes and Noble once and I just opened The Way of Kings just to get a few paragraphs read, and it kind of overwhelmed me at that moment. But after reading this, I think maybe I could handle it eventually. I want to start with Mistborn, but this gave me confidence. Tress of the Emerald Sea gave me confidence. It made me want a book 2, which I know we're not getting, but thanks to his wife for telling him to publish this, because she found it apparently and was like, you have to publish this. So I even think the intro, thank you for Emily, who has all my love, damn right. Like, she did a good job pushing you to make this one. Every character in this book has a pretty unique voice. Again, you could absolutely take away the who said what, and I pretty confidently could tell you who said it. Even one character is deaf and he has this magical signboard. So the words in here when he's speaking are just big, all caps, bold letters. So he's speaking. So that's a dead giveaway. But I appreciated the addition of that little element, because it does factor into some of the experience of different plot points and whatnot. And I really enjoyed that as well. Again, not giving away details of the story itself, but it's high seas adventure. It's a rescue story and a coming of age story that I really enjoyed. One of my favorite female characters I've read so far. And yes, my reading life is not that long, but right now Tress is it for me. Like, she's the best female written character I've read. And if you're looking for that, this is a good one for you. It's a wonderful adventure. It is breezy. It is heavy. It did make me emotional at times. It made me angry. It made me sad. It made me laugh out loud, which is not easy to do in a book, but it did it. And it's not, I don't think, supposed to be funny. Like, it says on the back, an original fairy tale that will delight fans of William Goldman's The Princess Bride, Neil Gaiman's Stardust. Stardust is also on my list, so that gave me excitement to get to that story eventually. But Princess Bride is humorous. I know that, so humor is supposed to be part of it, but he had a really cool narrative style of telling the story through the perspective of this character that apparently is within the rest of his universe. And, I hadn't considered writing a book that way, but it really inspired me to think about telling a story from the voice of someone who's in the story, but it's not a first person. It's really interesting, and I really enjoyed it. And I already felt that kind of influence the short story I'm writing for my writers group that I'm holding once a month, which I'll tell you guys more about that in a different video. But giving the people who attend a hero, a villain, and a situation, a world conflict, perhaps, to write a short story, a chapter of a book, and that process is kind of influenced a little bit by this book, where I'm writing it a little bit differently in the narration, and it's made me a better writer. Not saying that my short story is brilliant, but it added something to my toolbox. It added something to consider. And that's one of the reasons we read books if we also write, because we want to be influenced in some way to expand our ability. Like, there's a subconscious process that occurs when you read books like this that are really great, that influences your mind, which then influences your fingers when you're writing, when you're creating, and you don't even know it's happening. And that is one of the ways I learn best, is by not knowing I'm learning, but just enjoying it. So I cannot recommend this enough. I have nothing bad to say about this book. Easily top 5. That's without being pressed to really think about it. It would rank not as number 5. I guarantee you that. But I have to sit down and remake that list sometime in the future. But I can guarantee you that book, unless crazy stuff happens, is going to be in that list easily for the rest of, I don't know how long. I was going to say the rest of my life, but that's very verbose. That's bombastic. And that's just silly. But that's what I want to say, because it really excited me and made me sad that it was over. And that is not a first for me, but it's a rare thing for me to finish a book and just be like, oh, because there's a book 2, a book 3, a book 4, you get to go back to that world, but this is over for me. Tress is done with her story. It's wrapped up neatly. And honestly, I wouldn't want him to make another novel of it, because right now it's just this image of perfection in my head that I wouldn't want messed with. So can't recommend it enough, especially if you've never read Sanderson. As I haven't, this was a very accessible starting point, and I will always, I'm pretty confident, recommend this book if anyone wants to know where to start with Sanderson. Yes, I haven't read any other Sanderson, but I can't imagine there being a better starting point than this book. So go out and check it out if you haven't read it. Otherwise, until next time, journey well, my friends.